You're listening to the Dead Padawans Society, a science fiction and fantasy podcast celebrating the ideas, mythologies, and truths in iconic works of sci-fi. I'm Brett Inman, joined by my friend,
Nick Dennis.
Hey Nick, how are you this week?
I'm doing good. I've noticed that your intros are a lot more positive than mine.
I'm going to be honest, I listened to myself on the first one, and I sound super boring, and like in putting myself in the shoes of our audience, I was like, if that is the voice I hear at the beginning of an episode of this podcast, I don't want to listen to the rest of it.
See, I can't bring myself there. It's just like, you're here, this is it, let's go.
Here's the show. You're going to get what you get. But yeah, no,
this is me. If you don't like me, whatever.
Plus, I'm excited. It's always good to be recording the episode with you.
It is nice. I am tired though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, yesterday was Halloween. So
yeah, except whenever people are listening to this like 3 weeks from now, they're gonna be like, no, it's not.
Yeah, this will come out later, but yeah, yesterday was Halloween,
Yeah.
and I am dog tired today.
Wow.
I haven't mentioned that to you yet, but yeah, because we went trick-or-treating and got back home, and then I adamantly felt that we needed to watch a scary movie.
Well,
because
yeah,
I
you
feel,
have to.
Yeah, because if you don't go to...
My wife and I do the same thing. It's a yearly tradition.
Yeah, because if you don't go to like a party as an adult
Mhm.
or some sort of get together for Halloween because you're doing the trick-or-treat thing with your kid, like I feel like I need to do something adult for it, and so
Yeah.
I like to watch a movie, and so we were up a lot later than
No.
I expected to be on a midweek.
Yeah,
So
what'd you guys watch?
we watched The Birds,
Oh, nice.
which she does not. My wife does not like horror movies at all. She can't take things that are scary, and so any Halloween type movie has to be pretty mild in order for her to watch it. And even with that, with this movie, she looked up the story beats beforehand.
Oh, that's funny.
And I was like, you're ruining it.
Yeah.
But she's like, I have to know what's coming, because she has anxiety about horror movies. She can't do them. She doesn't like the creep. She doesn't like the build-up.
Yeah.
She doesn't like the darkness.
Does
she can't do it.
Does she cover her eyes during parts where it starts to get scary?
We don't watch movies that require covering eyes, because early in our marriage,
Yeah.
I kind of tricked her into watching things.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you're an adult. Like, watch these kind of scary things with me, and I learned my lesson. She got super angry because she does not do horror movies.
See, I don't introduce horror movies to Mary Catherine very often because she too does not care for them. But around Halloween, she is always willing to watch, and I think she enjoys them more than she lets on. And so inevitably we will plan to watch one, and we'll watch a few, like right around.
Really?
Yeah. So
See,
but Mary Catherine covers her eyes and will play on her phone if she starts getting too nervous, and she'll be like, just describe to me what's happening so I know what's in the plot. And so I'll have to, and then the thing is, she even at that is like, but don't describe it in a scary way. You have to describe it in a really, really mundane, normal. And so I'm giving like a detailed beats. Okay, now the person is walking across the room, and there is, yeah. So
bless you, dude,
so
because
funny.
I cannot do that. Whenever we watch a movie, I've seen many times, and I'm trying to introduce it to her, even if it's not, it may be more of a thriller movie. It's not a horror movie, but the tension is there, and she'll do the same thing. She'll hide behind like a blanket. She's like, you have to tell me. And it's inevitably always in the times where nothing is coming. And so it drives me crazy, because I'm like, nothing is going to happen.
So funny.
Like when they get down this hallway to that room, that's it. This is a fake build-up, and I'll tell her that, and she doesn't believe me.
See, Mary Catherine's pretty well attuned. Like, she tends to know the beats pretty accurately. Now, there are things that I realize will surprise her, and some of those I let on, like, it's probably going to get scary here in a second.
Well, see, and like the jump scares and things like that come out of nowhere to where there isn't a build-up, and so the things you're going to get scared at, you won't know to ask about beforehand.
Yeah.
Usually the build-up to things in horror movies is a complete, they're just trying to get you to a place where there isn't actually.
Well, for me, like sometimes
scare.
even jump scares and stuff are so formulaic. I tend to know when they're coming, and Mary Catherine isn't always in tune to those moments, and I realize those are going to be the things that get her or make. Yeah,
you're like, it's been about 8 minutes
since something scary's happened.
So
yeah,
And there's no music cue. There's
Yeah.
about to be a jump scare.
Yeah. Oh, completely. Yeah, we actually watched The Others, the Nicole Kidman film.
Oh, yeah,
last night.
yeah.
I love the tone of that movie that it sets.
I haven't seen that one in a long time, but the twist, should I say? There's a twist.
There's
whatever.
a twist, yeah.
That's not a huge spoiler,
Yeah.
but the twist on that was really cool. I
yeah.
really liked that.
Yeah, it's an interesting, it's a different take on ghost stories.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy it.
I will say we watched The Birds last night, and I hadn't seen it in a long time, and so I was like, oh, this will be a good one, because we did Psycho last year.
Yeah.
Because I finally convinced her, I'm like, Hitchcock movies are not scary. Like by today's
standards, for sure.
They're just not. They're not anything you'll jump at and be so scared at. And so we watched Psycho. I was like, this one is not as bad as Psycho.
And then you got to the point when that guy's eyes were pecked out by birds.
Yeah, but see, that to me isn't even that. That's not that scary. And the thing with the birds is that there's like no tension for most of the movie. A lot of it is just story and character build-up, which isn't bad. But for an audience member, for somebody in today's that has the formulaic, jump scare here, there's things along in horror movies today, to where that the first,
half
of the movie, act and a half is all story, nothing really scary at all. But then when it kicks in at the end, it's really good. My favorite scene in that is her sitting outside the school when the ravens.
Yeah.
That is, even though it's not particularly scary and it's not the most intense part of the movie by far, it is the best build-up of that entire movie. When she's sitting there and you just one by one, and I love it because it's one by one, and then there's a long cut of her smoking and looking around, and then she sees one flying and turns around, and then there's a million there, and I'm like, that's a perfect that's perfect editing.
It really is.
And putting together. And so
it's a very Hitchcockian construction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was like, yeah, that's really good. So yeah, that was what we did for Halloween.
Cool.
Did y'all go trick-or-treating?
Keaton is just a little over 1, so we stayed in. Now I did throw some costumes on him and took pictures so that
I did see those, the Toy Story ones.
Yeah,
those are good.
Yep, and then I edited him in a Woody onesie and him in a Buzz onesie into the same picture, and I'm like, it's like they're twins. This is weird. This is really.
That's what some people will be like. Wait a minute.
Do they have?
You have another one?
When did you guys have another that's the same age?
You're like, oh, the second one, he cooked longer.
Yeah.
He didn't want to come out.
Yeah, it's a clone.
Yeah. We liked this one so much, we were like, why try for another one? Let's just get another one of these.
We actually, it's funny that you bring that up, because we actually did try for another one, and in May of next year are having our second child.
What? Are you serious?
I am dead serious, yes. Yeah.
Dude.
I, by the way, had not announced that to Nick before we started recording, so this is the first Nick has heard of it.
Do you want?
So,
you want?
I want the audience to know. Yeah.
Okay.
By the point this episode airs, it'll be public knowledge.
Awesome, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're super excited. So we have loved being parents for the first one, so we're very, very excited about the second one. Now, we don't know gender and stuff yet, so but we'll once that comes around, we'll find out.
Dude, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
What did you say the date was again?
Yeah, middle of May. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Well, congrats.
Number 2.
That's really cool. Well, it's funny because we're talking about a family today on our episode, and then we're going to be going into talking more about family here in a little bit. But that's awesome, dude. I'm so excited for you guys.
Yeah. Good surprise, right?
Yeah.
You're welcome, audience.
It's more for me than for anybody. Thank you.
You're all on the inside. We haven't even told our parents yet. So this is my test to see who's listening to the show. If anybody's like, congratulations, then I know they're listening to us.
You're not serious.
I realize there are only like 5 people listening to the...
There you go. It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, today we are actually going to be talking about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah.
So a nice, fun family feature.
Yep. 2 families with 2 children each. So
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a family movie, and it came out when we were children, and it was a huge movie when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And so
it was a huge movie.
It was a huge movie about small people. And I was thinking about it. This movie is not that big today, which is funny because when it came out, it made a ton of money.
Especially for its budget. The budget was super small.
It was like, I think I saw it was $18 million, and it made like $220 in its theatrical run, which is ridiculous return. And it was Disney's top live action movie for 5 years running after that.
That's awesome.
Which, I mean, they're bigger into animated, and especially getting into the 90s, they went back into animation big time. But I was like, man, I didn't realize it was that successful, but it was huge when we were growing up. Everyone saw it and loved it. But I don't know, do kids today know this movie?
I doubt it. I mean, because it hasn't...
Other than parents like us intentionally putting our kids in front of it.
Yeah, it hasn't gotten... Well, it also hasn't gotten the Disney treatment with a lot of their popular properties. You know, like it hasn't gotten the reboot or the remake or reimagining or origin story kind of thing.
Well, it also hasn't gotten the rollout of, you know, like their big animated features going back into the vault, and then they're out on this edition, and then a few years later they're back in this edition. Yeah. This sucker is hard to find.
Yeah, it basically is just in the vault. They're like, nope, we're just leaving it in there.
It's like we're just right beside Disney's head, and it's staying right there.
Is it Mary Poppins or one of the Pirates movies? Nope, stays in the vault.
We don't care. Yeah. No, we don't. Let's not make money off a nice Blu-ray of this. Let's just put all the money into another.
Yeah, I think they finally did do a Blu-ray release of these films, but yeah, it's hard to come by.
Oh, is it like a pack of the Is it all three?
Yeah,
even the
the first direct-to-video Disney film.
Yeah. So it was this one, and then Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, and then Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves.
Yep.
Which I didn't realize in looking at this episode, and I found a trailer for Honey, I Shrunk Ourselves and watched it, and I'm like, holy smoke, I remember all of this stuff. Yeah. And I didn't think I had watched it that much, but I remembered everything. Yeah. And I was like, oh, wow, I must have really watched this movie
Well, and then those things, and even the TV series, there may be some ways that the Honey franchise burned itself out a little bit. And so maybe it got a little too hot, and they overworked it to a point where they've decided they pulled back significantly.
In watching that trailer, I was like, you can just tell by it. I was like, this is not a good movie. It's campy and over the top. I mean, and even the other two movies have camp and some craziness in them, but this was to a whole other level. And so it was kind of like, we need to put this to bed after this one. And it was direct to DVD for a reason. Yeah. But it's funny that you mentioned reboot, because I looked and there is a reboot of this in the works that's going to, I don't know if it's a movie or a series or what it will be, but it's coming to their streaming platform.
Really? Yeah, and it's not just like the series that they already made. Like
no, it's specifically slated as a reboot. I don't know, film.
It's probably going to be a series then, because I mean, I feel like that's what streaming platforms.
But they're also doing movies. Like they're doing
for the platform. That's
because they're doing a not Parent Trap, the dog, Lady and the Tramp. They're making a live action version of that, like they're doing their other live action movies, but it's coming straight to
the dog.
Yeah.
You just tried to get me to hone in on a single Disney film with the dog. 101 Dalmatians.
Yeah.
Oliver and Company.
Oh yeah, that's true.
The Shaggy Dog. I mean, there are so many dog properties in the Disney canon. You just tried to get me to hone in on Lady and the Tramp with the dog.
For myself. But yeah, that's one they need to remake better. Yeah. Because I didn't care for the 101 Dalmatian live action ones. I really like that animated movie.
Yeah. When they do Lady and the Tramp, they need to do one of those like villain origin stories just about the Siamese cats. You know, kind of like what they did with Maleficent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I've even heard that it's getting a sequel or something. Apparently, it made a ton of money.
Oh,
when
that doesn't surprise me.
But yeah, so I saw that this is getting some sort of reboot, which makes sense when you think of Ant-Man and the technology that is there. Like the Ant-Man, they have like a second unit on those movies that are filming just the small, because a lot of it is not even CG, is they are actually filming you know, the
really small actors.
Yeah, well, no, really, they're on sets filming the small portions of it, getting a camera right down on the ground, which is funny because they did in this film as well. There's in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, there's some good camera work that's focused on making things look very large.
Yeah,
they still do that on Ant-Man, those movies.
Yeah, the effects that are used in Honey are brilliant. Like it really blends all of the special effects techniques of that time in a great effect.
Yeah, for a pre-CGI film, this sucker holds up.
Yeah.
In rewatching it, I was surprised at. I expected just to be picking it apart with, oh, that doesn't look real anymore.
Yeah.
That doesn't age well. Now that I'm adult, I can see this and this. But really, it holds up really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a little information about it. It came out in 1989. It came out the same weekend as Batman, the original Batman movie. So Batman took number 1.
Yeah.
Which obviously it was a darker interpretation, you know, a lot more than the original Batman series, and so this was kind of counter programming with a fun kids movie.
Well, I
did very well.
Yeah, I heard somebody who even said that the success of Batman may have been part of the reason that Honey, I Shrunk the Kids had success,
because people were just going to the theater.
Yeah, people were at the theater and couldn't necessarily get into, which this has happened to me before. Like you go on opening weekend to something and you didn't plan ahead or Fandango tickets, and so you get there and the next 3 showings are sold out. Okay, well, since we're already here, let's watch that movie.
Whoa, you do that?
Occasionally, yeah.
I don't do that anymore. If I look on my phone and there's not a ticket, I'm not going. if the thing I want to see is not there, I'm not going.
This happened to us on vacation this year.
Yeah,
so
okay, because you want to go see a flick on vacation, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so came out the same weekend as Batman. That makes sense that it would gain some off of that.
Or the parents were going to see Batman and sending their kids to see Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Right, because that's still back in the day where you could throw your kids into a movie theater without you, and that was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the 80s and 90s, there was a rash of kidnappings that had happened. So that, you know, I'm sure those have no connection whatsoever.
Yeah,
No.
Well, it's funny whenever you hear anyone talking about like Star Wars, when Star Wars came out, they're like, my mom and dad would drop me off with, you know, money during the summer, or I'd ride my bike over, and I watched Star Wars like 300 times. That summer, and I'm like, that's so crazy to think about going to a theater alone as a kid.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was directed by Joe Johnston. This was his first film to direct.
He's such like the things that he's worked on are so interesting. Like I wish I knew more about him as a director, because he's not very high profile. I don't feel like.
And I felt the same way when I saw that it was him, because I never knew before, and I was like, oh, this was him, and it was his first film. Never knew that before. He is one of those that kind of flies under the radar and doesn't get the public attention as much as your Spielberg.
I mean, even though he's worked on major films, the Captain America, First Avenger, The Rocketeer. Yeah,
and great, like good, solid ones, and have also been successful. So it's like, man, he's a good person to pitch your movie to. Like, he has a good track record. The original name of this film was Teeny Weenies, and then it went through subsequent name changes. It was Teeny Weenies, and then it was Grounded for a while.
That's terrible. That's worse than Teeny Weenies.
Really? Because at least Teeny Weenies is something.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, they heard the teeny weenie's name and they're like, we can't put that on this. That just sounds weird.
Yeah.
So then they went with Grounded.
But Grounded, like that doesn't communicate anything. Like,
yeah, they were trying to go, I guess, for a play on words of, oh, they're kids and parents. You're grounded, but you're
little and on the ground. That's terrible. That's awful.
It's not a great title. Well, then the next one is even worse. The Big Backyard.
With lots and lots of room.
Yeah, or it's like I thought the big comfy couch because I was thinking giant stuff. And I was like, that's a nothing title there. The
it really is.
That was kind of like, well, then they finally ended up just taking the dialogue from the movie and slapping it as a name, which was a much better choice.
Oh, absolutely,
better than any of these names. So that worked out.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, this is going to be our time where we say, hey, if you haven't seen this movie, you should see it.
Yeah.
You can't find it streaming
yeah, good
anywhere,
luck finding it.
Unless you just rent it or you buy it.
Hopefully you remember it from your childhood.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think most adults now have seen this. If you're a little bit younger, it may have come before you and you missed it.
Yeah.
But if you haven't seen it, find a copy of it, rent it on Vudu or something like that, and watch it because it's solid. I really like it. So anyway, spoiler warning from here on out for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Now let me give you a little brief synopsis of this before we get into it. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids tells the story of 4 distant parents and the children who are desperately searching to gain their attention. Scientist Wayne Zielinski and his realtor wife Diane have lost touch with their children from being workaholics in a strained marriage. Russell and Mae Thompson are similarly distracted by planning a fishing weekend with their friends, and through Russell's desperate attempts to prove his masculinity to his sons. The 2 neighboring couples hardly notice their children are missing when a true crisis befalls their households. With the lives of their kids in the balance, these parents must overcome the shortcomings and failures that have brought their families to the brink of collapse.
Wow, that sounds like Oscar bait.
Right? I mean, it sounds like a really deep look into people's demons, and the dynamics of a family and its breakdown.
Yeah, wow! I didn't realize this was such a deep movie.
It could really win awards.
I got hung up on the giant cookies and jokes about French kissing.
That's just for it to still be kind of like an action movie, but really this is about character development. This film.
Wow, in seeing it so many times, how did I miss that?
Well, you're just not a deep person, Brett. You're just looking at the spectacle when underneath the surface there's some really deep things happening here.
Are there, though?
No, there's not. Everything I just said was pretty much a glossed over thing in this film. This film is not about anyone's particular struggle or any major significant development within characters or their personal struggles or anything like that. This film is meant to be fun.
100%.
And it doesn't go too deep. It doesn't go too heavy. It doesn't bog you down in the minutia or the science of what is going on. I think there's times where even like the size of the kids like changes in this film.
Yeah.
They're not getting too hung up on the details or the heavy themes that may have even been introduced in this movie.
No.
This is a fun ride of a film. And I think it works.
Oh, I completely do. It had been years since I've watched this, and as a kid, it was one of my favorite movies. And honestly, in seeing it again, it still holds up as a movie that I love.
Yeah, there were beats in it where I was laughing out loud that I was like, oh, that still holds up. That's funny. I found myself smiling.
Yeah.
Even though this film is light on plot, it is just heavy on fun and action and spectacle and just a fun ride. And yeah, I found myself really enjoying it again, and I didn't feel the years of separation from it that I do with other things I really liked growing up. And if anybody goes back and watches episodes of Power Rangers or anything again from your childhood, you're just like, oh man, this is this bad?
Yeah. Well, so many movies even featuring kids do not grow up with you. You come to hate the children whenever you get older. You're like, oh.
I will say with this, the children are probably my least favorite aspect in this movie.
But to me, they're not. They don't get offensive in the way that a lot of movie children gradually become offensive as you get older.
Well, yeah, that's in that respect. Yeah. Yes, the young Thompson boy, you just want to punch in the face.
Well, yeah, but
that's his character.
Even at the time, I kind of wanted to. Like, yeah, he's a bully. Like,
yeah, that's true.
He's a jock kid.
Yeah, he's a jock and he's a bully kid, and he's talking a big game the whole time, but never knows the right answer of anything.
Yeah.
But he gets to ride the ant and becomes his friend.
Yeah.
So, growth there, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Maybe do the characters grow in Honey, I Shrunk the Kid?
I mean,
just when the machine is turned on? Just at the end of the movie.
That's right. The growth is in physicality.
Yes.
They get larger at the end.
Yeah. See, the thing is, for plot development, we wanted the characters to grow, but we just decided to shrink them at the beginning and then literally have them grow at the end. So it's kind of a different. It's more literal than metaphorical growth in our movie. Yeah.
We want it to be seen more than felt or understood.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what did you remember about this movie and that you were like, when you were watching it, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And how many times do you think you saw this whenever you were a kid?
A billion.
Yeah. Yeah. We had... whenever I was finally able to find a DVD copy of this, it was full screen, and at first I was like, and then I realized, wait a second, I'm sure I only
this is
have
the
ever
only way
seen
you've ever seen it.
Yeah, in full screen, so it was such a nostalgic trip because I too had seen it 100 billion times.
Yeah. Well, and I borrowed the DVD copy from you because I couldn't find it anywhere. I wanted to get a physical copy, and the graininess of that DVD is like, oh, this is when they just like grabbed whatever copy was around and made it into a DVD. They probably like converted it from a VHS copy and stuck it on a DVD and sold it because it is grainy and it does not look great. Even on a Blu-ray player on a 4K TV, it looked terrible.
Probably part of your problem.
Oh, yeah, it's probably it as well. But, I mean, there were some parts better than others, but yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, in that experience of remembering things throughout the film, there were a lot of things that immediately came back to me that ended up being, it's like, I had forgotten that the ant dies.
Oh,
I had totally forgotten that. And then, like, we start getting to that point in the scorpion. Like, I remembered that it, like, fights a scorpion. And then I was like, oh, no, it dies when it fights. No, not ant. And so, like, that still kind of got me again.
Well, and it's funny, too, because they give it a name, Andy or Auntie.
Auntie, yeah.
Well, sometimes it sounds like he's saying Andy. Yeah. And that may have been just the actor's fault. But I guess it's Auntie. And then he dies. And I'm like, oh, wait, so Ant-Man took that from this movie. Like, that's a call. I think that's intended to be a callback to this movie because he names his aunt in the first Ant-Man movie, and then it dies close to the end because it's like Anthony. Is his aunt in the movie, and so I'm like, oh, okay, so I was thinking of it the opposite, the reverse way, but I guess it was here.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, so much of it was familiar. Like, this thing was burned in my memory. And
the title sequence at the beginning, that's the cartoon. I had completely forgot that was there. And then as soon as it came up, I immediately remembered it. I'm like, oh, I forgot that this is the beginning of this movie.
What happened to cartoon openings to live action movies? Oh. Like, that is such a lost
It really is.
thing.
Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore.
Huh.
But yeah, it's a solid cartoon opening.
Yeah.
It's like making the credit. I mean, you could easily just put the credits in the setup scenes. But this was a fun artistic way of doing it. And yeah, that's where it started, because I couldn't remember how the movie started either. And then I saw that and I was like, oh man. And so you get all these rushes of, that happens and that happens.
One of the things, whenever I was evidently a very small child whenever I watched this movie so much, because I don't think I ever got the French class joke. Like, I don't think I ever understood exactly what that was saying. And then, like, they bring it up again at the end when the kid is like, oh, French class
and
at the
laughing,
meal.
like,
and laughing. And I'm like, I still don't get it. And so, like, it was so funny as an adult, be like, oh, poor little Brett, you didn't know anything. You were so innocent.
I had older siblings that just said, that's what it's. They're talking about French kissing.
I was the oldest, so there was no trailblazer for me.
Which, speaking of French kissing, when they're in the Lego at night, and they're just they finally have this again character development and plot. They're just having like their first kind of deep conversation, and then all of a sudden she goes in for the kill.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and it's like in a
and
cut.
I was like, oh, that was like a big.
It's like
jump right there.
There is a cut away to something else that's at like the parents or something, and then whenever it cuts back, it's like they're just making out. It's like, well, okay.
Yeah, and I was like, that escalated quickly.
I mean, they're teenagers, so
that's true. They've got raging hormones, and it is the 80s.
Yeah. So that was those were some things. One of the things that I was actually kind of surprised by and almost let down by the lawnmower sequence. I always remembered in my head it being like longer and scarier than it ended up being in rewatching it. Like I was really I was almost underwhelmed by it.
It's pretty short. I mean, and that may just be as a kid, it's more excruciating, and so it feels longer than what it really is.
Yeah. Well, and like music, the music in that sequence is definitely like it's when the music sounds the most dangerous. But in general, like that sequence is over pretty quickly, and I mean there are other moments in the film that are definitely more tense than that was, but I seem to remember that being like the scare, and I can remember as a little kid like holding on to like the chair. I'm like, oh
well, and I forgot how that ended, because you know that the parents are trying to get the motor to stop, and so I automatically assumed they're going to hold on just long enough for the motor to stop and it'll be fine. But no, they get sucked up in there and flung out, and none of them die.
Nothing happens.
And I was like, yeah, these kids have crazy plot armor for this, because they also get thrown off the bee earlier.
Yeah.
Well, but it is funny because they have as soon as they get thrown off, the next scene where you see them getting up, they have blood like coming out of their mouths and stuff, and I'm like, that's actually. You don't see that a lot in kids' movies. Like, they'll get scuffed up and like bruised or hurt or something like that.
Yeah,
but
what you don't know
straight up have blood.
Is after the film happens, they actually have to go to the emergency room because they all have severe internal injuries.
Well, that was the thing, too. Like, the little, is it Nicky?
Yeah.
The little kid, I mean, he straight up is in that milk water splashing around. And the same thing of him holding on to that animatronic or whatever bee. With like crazy wind being blown at him. I'm like, they put this kid through the ringer for real for this movie.
Yeah.
It was pretty rough. Well, and
Joe Johnson really hated that kid.
He's like, he follows me around everywhere on set. Let's turn that fan up to like 12.
Does it have a higher setting? Use that one.
He's like, I can't really swim. He's like, we just need like 3 or 4 more good takes. Just keep splashing around. And here comes the big spoon.
So I think the biggest surprise to me in this that I did not remember, and I don't know that this ever registered with me, and you kind of suggested it in your description of the plot, the adult drama that's almost a subtext, like it really isn't developed at all, but that the mother was staying the night with grandma because they're having marital issues. I did not remember that at all.
No, because it's when they get together, even when they're on the phone.
Yeah.
They're on the phone and they're having just a great cordial conversation. And then later when she's home, she's excited that he gets the machine working. And yeah, it's just kind of odd. It's like, what was the fight about? And I guess they're not mad at each other.
Nope.
Are they rocky right now, or was it just a spat and she was over at her mom's house anyway, and so she just stayed the night?
I don't know. It is weird, and again, because it's not treated, I can understand not remembering it. But yeah, I mean, it definitely is present. Like that actually could have been a really interesting. If they'd wanted to make the film more serious, that would have been an interesting direction.
And it's funny because it wouldn't have taken much.
No,
more addition. Like even if you didn't change anything, but at the end, the parents talking to the kids and saying, "We haven't been here." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've been. Fighting with each other and in our own worlds, and we haven't been focused on us.
Well, and Wayne Szalinski is a way worse dad than I rememred, too. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, he's like, can you go bother your sister? I got to get this fixed. Well, so let's switch gears really quick because this movie is really focused on fun. And so there's a big part of sci-fi is, introducing science fiction concepts and exploring and widening our understanding of the universe. And a lot of sci-fi can be very deep and challenging and expanding our knowledge.
Well, even most of what we've looked at so far in this podcast has been that kind of sci-fi.
Right. It's been dealing with heavy topics of morality and personal stakes, and also talking about the future to come or what technology could bring. This is a lot simpler. There's basically one scientific concept which makes it sci-fi, but other than that, it's just a fun fare.
Yeah.
And so in sci-fi, how is the sci-fi genre unique? How is it a unique playground for a writer, a creator, or the audience taking this concept with something as simple as this, as building a machine that can shrink somebody down? How is sci-fi unique for making those kind of playgrounds other than other genres?
Yeah, that's really interesting because, you're 100% right that a lot of times science fiction isn't fun. It feels like sometimes I think creators feel like they can't be fun, or even works of sci-fi that are too fun are kind of like relegated to sort of a ghetto. Like, oh, that's really just space opera. That's too fun to be in the sci-fi category.
Yeah, you kind of have people feel like there has to be a seriousness to it in order to be taken serious as a true sci-fi, and not just fun fare for the blockbuster summer.
Yeah, I guess one of the things to me that gives sci-fi the ability to be a good playground is that it gives you an opportunity to create a perspective that is totally different than what we experience. And I think perspective a lot of times is able to give us a new experience. Like our experience is a lot of times determined by what our perspective is on things. Like if there's a Mark Twain quote that, anything a body is obliged to do is work, and anything the body is not obliged to do is play. And I think that's very true. And even in, the things I do, if I feel like, and my perspective is that, what I'm doing doesn't matter, or this is boring and mundane, then it becomes worse. Whereas if I find the fun and the excitement and the interest in it, then it becomes fun, even though it's potentially the same work.
Which is funny because in this movie, Nicky does the whole Tom Sawyer whitewash fence thing with the lawnmower.
Oh, he does.
Like he's trying to trick his friend into doing the work for him, because by this time the lawnmower is mundane to him. It's like, oh yeah, it's a remote control, but he's probably done it a million times. It's funny because Tom Sawyer and
well, and even that he's trying to get his friend to like pay him in cookies. Yeah.
That kid in cookies.
Yeah. So for me, sci-fi is able to give us a perspective on things that we cannot have necessarily in reality, and that then gives us the ability to experience things in a whole new way. There's a work of a short story by Isaac Asimov called "The Fun They Had," that is largely about that idea that our perspective changes how we feel about something. And so in the story "The Fun They Had," there are these two neighbor children, Tommy and Margie, and they live in the future. Okay, so these are future kids. Tommy finds a book it's like a paper book, and these two kids freak out because everything they read is on screens and like telebooks and things like that. And so they're this, physical paper book. They're like puzzling over. When you finish reading it, it doesn't like change or anything. Like, do you just throw it away when you're done? Like, what do you? And so they don't understand it, and so they start talking about it, and they live in a world where like even their teachers are like at home, this like robotic system that like works them through at their own pace and is kind of geared towards them. And so the book is about school. And so Tommy starts talking about the way school used to be, the way this book describes it, that there was a human teacher, and they're both like, what? That doesn't, how could that happen? That doesn't make any sense. And then that all the children come together and are in the same grade. Like, that's baffling to like. And so I love the passage that
how could a teacher maintain a class full of crazy kids?
Yeah. Well, and part of
anything get done.
Part of it, like they're definitely in terms of education, like an individualized education is better than like a communal education.
Yeah.
And so these kids clearly, like, that's their understanding, is that, oh, we live in a world where I am one-on-one with this robot through the day that teaches me whatever I'm supposed to be learning right now based on, my current age, rather than being in a class of people all learning the same thing. And so I love when this ends, Margie is called in by her mom to start school, and so she sits down, and there's just a short passage from it. I'm gonna read. The screen was lit up, and it said, "Today's arithmetic lesson is on the addition of proper fractions. Please insert yesterday's homework in the proper slot." Margie did so with a sigh. She was thinking about the old schools they had when her grandfather's grandfather was a little boy. All the kids from the whole neighborhood came, laughing and shouting in the schoolyard, sitting together in the schoolroom, going home together at the end of the day. They learned the same things so they could help one another with their homework and talk about it. And the teachers were people. The mechanical teacher was flashing on the screen. When we add the fractions 1/2 and 1/4, Margie was thinking about how the kids must have loved it in the old days. She was thinking about the fun they had.
Nice.
I love that ending because, and the whole irony of the story is, presumably, and this story actually does end up in a lot of like school textbooks as a short, in short story units. Yeah. And so it's there's a definite irony because most people think of school as bad and boring and not fun at all. But whenever your perspective changes, it makes this thing that's normally mundane fascinating and exciting and entirely new and different. And so I think for me, science fiction really opens that by giving us a unique perspective that we couldn't otherwise have.
Yeah. And this film, it fits really well with what you're talking about because, in science fiction, if it's the future or it's space, that final frontier, or it's AI and the unknown that comes with it, a lot of those, new perspectives and new places, settings, immediately with them, we think, oh yeah, there's going to be fun and interesting things and new things for us to explore there. Mm-hmm. Whereas this one is taking what is already there, just these kids' backyard.
Yep.
And it's always been there. They've played in it a million times, but now changing their perspective, like what you're saying, they get down to be incredibly tiny, and then it's a whole new world, even though it's the world that they know. Nothing has changed, just themselves. Mm-hmm. They're the only ones that have changed.
Yeah, and I think, like really that is the idea behind scientific curiosity too. Like it's actually really important to, rather than just taking things for granted, to ask questions and explore things that otherwise do seem mundane or ordinary.
Yeah, the question of if this, then what?
Yeah.
And so whereas a lot of that is very future focused, this is cool because it's now focused, and it's if we could shrink down to this size, then what would be our experience? The things that are, very simple could be the things that kill you. Mm-hmm. I love when early on when it's like a monarch butterfly flies overhead, and it's like Mothra to them.
It is.
It's like, and I think he says something like its wingspan to them is like 40-something feet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's awesome. That's so crazy to think about. And yeah, this movie takes a very simple premise concept and it really fleshes it out in so many great ways. And that's what makes it's funny. It's just a few feet, travel back to the back door of their house, which takes them like a day and a half. It's not just because of them having to walk it, but the things along the way, and the obstacles that they face.
Well, it's interesting because like the plot of the film, it almost feels like a fantasy road story, where you're on a quest.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of like Journey to the Center of the Earth or those stories where it's in this crazy location where everything is fantastical and larger than life.
Yeah.
And there's usually monsters and things that can easily take you out.
Yeah.
And yeah, but this is taking the known things. Yeah. So is fun an appropriate gauge to use in critiquing art?
What do you think? I mean, I would probably, just like my gut reaction is yes, but...
Well, it's funny because when you think of art, because this is a piece of art, and a lot of times people who want to equate film, and put it in its place with the arts in general, visual and written, and all the different genres that are out there. A lot of times it's about the substance. Good art has substance. It has it's well executed. It shows craftsmanship, and that's what makes good art. And so this has craftsmanship.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And so absolutely in that way, even though maybe the story isn't a masterpiece by any means, it's a very simple, but especially in the visual design of it, there's some mastery at work there with the set design and the use of special effects in it before CGI. All that's really good, and you could critique that, but film is a weird medium because a part of it is you experiencing the art, because you go to a movie theater not just to see art up on a screen and then respond to it, analytically. You go there to have some sort of, inner experience, to connect internally, emotionally to what's happening on the screen. And so you're a part of it. And so your enjoyment of it is a factor. And so I think fun is an important part of this art. And so I think it's an appropriate gauge of asking, is this good art? What do you think?
Yeah, I guess my thing, like a lot of art critics, art criticism generally is put in the category of philosophy, is like a subset of philosophy. And philosophers tend to be really serious, boring people. And so, they're bound to elevate nobler thoughts, and things like fun seem frivolous. I think even as we become adults, I think sometimes we have a tendency to lose a little bit of like the fun and frivolity of life. For me, one of the things that I go back to whenever I'm actually thinking about like art criticism and what actually makes things good, I kind of have a different perspective. And this was shared by a professor, Dr. Hawley. I don't know if you had him.
Oh yeah, I had him.
Yeah. So one of the bases that he uses for art criticism is Philippians 4:8. Whatever things are true, honest, just, pure, lovely, of good report, if there's virtue, if there's praise, think on these things. And he says, like, that's kind of a guide to aesthetics. Like, if you just apply those ideas and, like, whatever does those things, if that makes them art. And to me, like, humor and fun, those are real. Like, those are real experiences. Those are just as true experiences as, the more serious, nobler things that a lot of times get credit and get given attention for being more artistic or deeper, the tragedies and things like that.
What's better about me looking at, a beautiful oil painting and experiencing like pathos from it than going to a movie theater and a movie that is there to make you have a fun experience and enjoying myself and smiling and having a lot of fun with it. You know, two different pieces, two different emotions, but they're both doing them well.
Yeah.
And what you said is very true, that like critics are often, whenever in their reviews of something, if they use the F word, a lot of times people will be like, oh, that's an indicator that it's not that great. If they had to say it's fun, then it's nothing, you know, it's nothing really great. But at the same time, there's reviewers that are like, no, it's actually really fun. And if that's what it's meant to be, then, you know, why doesn't its excellence in that way make it a great film?
Well, and even from like the perspective of like Ecclesiastes, there's the idea that, you know, there's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. And that, like, sometimes we're not good at giving both of those sides equal credit and value. And so I think for me that would be the thing, is that art that is fun and that actually encapsulates and conveys that idea has value in that it's conveying fun, that fun is real.
Yeah. And that's a big contention too with you know, like the Academy Awards and things like that of late. Well, this year they tried to add the most popular movie award, and then the reaction to that was so bad that they backpedaled on it real quick. Yeah. But it was like, oh, here's your it was basically like, here's your award for the fun thing. Yeah. And that in itself, people hated it because it's like you're discounting blockbusters because they are spectacles and fun and people enjoy them. They're not as serious as your normal Oscar fare. And so like action movies and sci-fi movies, a lot of times, unless they're the heavy, serious sci-fi, don't get recognition. Horror movies are another one that don't get a lot of recognition for what they do. Again,
unless they take those genres and go in a very serious,
unless they do something
philosophical approach.
Yes, unless they are making, you know, some sort of
Get Out.
Like Get Out has a social and political point to it.
Yeah, and Shape of Water is a sci-fi movie, but it's about different things. It's more about the drama than it is about the sci-fi, the spectacle and the fun.
Right. And so now you have, and then there's a lot of people talking about Black Panther, that it may be the action movie now that has the potential, like, you know, the horror movie of Get Out getting consideration or Shape of Water getting consideration. There's people saying this is now up for consideration because it brings also you know, a heavier. But still, those that are, you know, Avengers Infinity War is not going to get any Oscar consideration. That's, you know, technically it probably will. For special effects or sound or
the way that the Guardians movies didn't get any love from, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. And the same thing with like Last Jedi. I thought whatever you think about that movie, it had such like emotional stakes and personal stakes, and I thought it was incredibly acted. Like between Mark Hamill's performance and Kylo Ren, Adam Driver's performance in there. Goodness, that's top caliber acting, but it's an action, fun fantasy.
It is frivolous. Yeah.
Yes, sci-fi, and so. A lot of times those get discounted, and I think the same thing with this. The F word doesn't have to be so terrible. That something can be fun for the sake of fun, and still, you know, be considered great. And I think this movie is a prime example of that.
I even feel like something that is fun doesn't even necessarily like have to be funny. I think there's a little bit of a difference between even those two things, and like. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, there are moments of humor, but a lot of the movie's just kind of this adventure that you get to go on with these characters. And so to me, that's like that is exemplifies that just having a positive experience is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And that maybe they didn't have such personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there weren't, such was internal turmoil or stakes that way, but the movie had stakes.
Yeah.
Their lives are on the line,
Mm-hmm.
and they do go through an adventure where they learn things on both sides, parents and kids.
Yeah.
And so there is growth, maybe not a huge amount, but they get through the obstacles that they face, and it's a fun adventure doing so.
Yeah.
One more question I have for you. Is fun too important in modern sci-fi properties, and does it diminish the genre or its integrity? Because you also have people within the sci-fi community, especially those who are very heavy on good sci-fi works, especially those that are, the written work and where it's been, what it has accomplished. And so, when you think of, I'll throw an example out, like iRobot,
Mm-hmm.
something that takes a good scientific premise and work, and then kind of pretty much waters it down and makes it a lot more palatable for a wide audience with a big star up front. Is there risk of too much fun watering down good sci-fi?
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to what I said from Ecclesiastes, like both of these are true and both of them are important. And so I think, and even, we pointed out some of the ways that Honey, I Shrunk the Kids does have some subtext that's worth thinking about, in the way that, to me, the adults, as an adult viewer, the adults got a lot more interesting, and their story isn't fun. It's about a dad who can't connect with his kids. It's about, parents that are on the verge of separating. And those are some really serious things that made me think about my life. And so that even that is a subtext of a movie that is ostensibly about having fun.
Yeah. And Disney movies generally do a pretty good job of that, of offering something for adults within their kid entertainment that can easily go way above the heads of kids, but they are still enjoying their portion of it, where it does offer some. Obviously, other Disney movies do it better, especially like the Pixar films.
Oh, yeah. Well, and a lot of times in the Pixar films, the same thing is appealing to both audiences, whereas this one I do feel like, as a kid, the adults got boring sometimes, and I didn't like Russ Sr., because I'm just like, he's just the mean man who doesn't want to let his kid be his kid. Like I didn't understand.
Yeah, get back to
tension.
the small.
Yeah.
Get back to the backyard.
Yeah.
They in other properties, they morph it a bit better and mix it to where you can enjoy the same things and levels of that within the same scene.
I'm really glad that in sci-fi we can have both. I think that's nice. I'm glad that we have films like Guardians of the Galaxy and, iRobot, that's, basically just an action film, and that we're also able to have films like, Ex Machina, things that are deeper and explore deeper themes. I feel like really if the art that is science fiction didn't have both of those, it would not actually be true. Like, it would not be reflecting truth.
Because that would be the breadth of human experience with looking at these different perspectives. Yeah,
and every work doesn't need to treat both, because, there are times in life where things are great, and there are times in life where things are hard and dramatic. And so I think you need all of it in a proper balance.
Yeah. Well, I even think of things like the Christopher Nolan movies. Like, think of Inception. If Inception didn't have the fun action spectacle and the fun dynamics of being in a dream and what you can do, like those fun aspects, if those weren't there, how digestible would that film be? Because that film is heady and has they're explaining a lot of intricate things within the plot in order to get you to understand what's happening with the levels and the stakes of what happens. And so if you removed the like fun action and spectacle and the fun dynamics, that would be really, it would still be interesting.
Yeah.
But it would be a lot harder to.
Well, and while that movie's a heist movie, it's also a movie that deeply explores like fathers and sons in a really unique way. And so the blending of those two things. And I feel like a lot of great works do blend those in the appropriate measure. Yeah.
And this may not have the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids may not have the greatest blend, but like we said, there's still there, and you can key into some things like we did on this watch that maybe you didn't before.
Yeah.
But still enjoy the fun spectacle that is given to you and to most kids viewing it. Mm-hmm. So what is the most fun about this premise and its execution for you? Like, what did you enjoy the most?
As an adult, it brought me back to being a kid. Like, I was having some of those memories about building Lego Lego houses. And thinking of myself being in those. And so, like, that it makes those mundane things seem extraordinary and wonderful. And just like that, everything is a possibility for an adventure. Like, that's just so great.
Yeah. Well, it's just like today when I went home, my kid she had a blanket
mm-hmm.
and she had it wrapped up and was holding it. And I was like, and she wanted to take it downstairs. And I'm like, what do you have in there? And she's like, no, Daddy, don't look. And I was like, what's in there? And so anyway, she took it downstairs. And I'm like, what does she have? So I kind of like snuck down there and looked, and she opened up her blanket, and it was we bought her a toy, and it was the box that the toy came in. And I was like, and because we usually we immediately throw those away, but this
mm-hmm.
is one that we didn't get to. So it was the plastic of it, and she didn't want it thrown away. She wanted to get her dolls, and it had something to do with the play that she wanted to accomplish today.
Oh, get out
and
of town.
So she was hiding it from me because she knew if I just saw it laying around, I would toss it. And that piece of clear amazing. Plastic might as well be gold.
That's so funny.
To her. And I was like, sure enough, it's a kid in a box. Like how many times has that joke been made that the kid wants to play with the box? Mm-hmm. And so, as a kid, you look at things like a toilet paper roll or, packaging or anything like that it has a lot more potential for fun than usually what mm-hmm. we do as adults. And so this is, it's nice to, mm-hmm. it gives you a bit of a wonder and a perspective that you lose as an adult. I love when, it's crazy how detailed they were in the sets that they built for this movie. Oh, yeah. There's the one shot where they're just walking, and I forget which one but they jump back and are freaked out because one of his toy dinosaurs is in the yard, and they built this giant dinosaur. That scene that is like
2 seconds,
3 seconds, and then you never see that dinosaur again. But it was an incredible shot.
Yeah,
and I was like, they built that huge dinosaur just for that shot.
Did you ever get the chance to go to Disney had basically a playground area?
Oh yeah,
that was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
The playground there in not MGM Studios.
It used to be MGM, now Hollywood Studios. Yeah. That there is video of me somewhere as a little kid running around, and that the sets, the way they built.
You got to ride the ant. Mm-hmm. You got to slide down the leaf. Mm-hmm. They had like netting up, like spider kind of netting that you could climb.
There's
on.
a dog nose that if you get real close to it, it'll make sniffing sounds. So,
yeah. It had Tinker Toys, I think.
Oh yeah, there was a giant Play-Doh can.
Yes, and it was so cool. Like, and especially when you're a kid, you're even smaller, and so they make that stuff big enough for adults, and so as a kid, it's even bigger from your perspective.
So the way the movie did that, and none of the things that were in that playground area were actual movie like set pieces, but like
because they made them to last. And so, even though they were, like the leaves were like hard, know, so that they would stand up to 1,000 kids going down them. It's like it still looks like a giant leaf,
Mm-hmm.
and when I walk into here, I'm immediately transported into that world.
Yeah. So every time, whenever they're even initially shrunk and they're on that wood floor, even like that set is awesome, and it's just a giant version of a wood floor. There's like the big nail.
Yeah. You see, and there's even you can see where the boards are nailed in. They got the nail heads there. The cracks in between have massive cobwebs.
Well, they have to carry the couch across even. So
yeah. And they had to jump over it. Yeah, it's just fun.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's just a lot of fun. So I have a few as we wrap up. I have a few rapid questions for you.
I've missed rapid questions.
Yeah. So
this is, by the way, listeners, this is my favorite segment of the show. I will go back and listen to this and be like, what did I answer?
Well, these are just fun.
Hopefully you play along at home too.
Yeah. I'll have to think of, I haven't thought of my answers for these, but let me pitch them to you first. Okay. So would you rather be a scientist banking on the success of your wild theory or invention, or a realtor working purely off commission of sold houses?
I wonder which one I'm going to pick here. I would definitely be the scientist banking on the success of my creations.
But even that's obviously the fun answer. But as an adult who you need to provide for your family.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Which one would be
the
wiser decision to make? Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to go the realtor, because it's like I feel like I could sell a house rather than a theory, like a scientific theory, or that people are. You're much more likely to sell a house than you are your invention.
That's probably true.
I think. Okay, you're tiny and come across a giant ant. Do you try to hide, fight it, or befriend it?
Hide. 100%.
Yep, me too.
That thing will murder me.
When they're fighting that thing and it's got its pincers, and it's funny because right before that they talk about, it can lift, like 15 or 10 times its body weight, and it's like, and its pincers could cut you in half, probably.
Ants, well, especially depending on what ant it is from the colony. Like if it's just a soldier, like
if it's a hive mind,
you're hosed, man.
You're not gonna find. Yeah, most likely you're not gonna find that one ant that.
No.
That especially for befriending.
Yeah.
Okay, so Einstein or Quark.
Einstein or the dog?
Yeah.
Einstein from Back to the Future. Gotcha.
Scientist dog versus scientist dog.
I was picturing I was picturing the man, and I'm like, wait, what am I choosing?
Yeah, I knew that's what it would be. So Einstein or
Einie.
Quark.
Sorry.
Yeah, he's traveled in time.
Well, he was also just more chill. Like Quark is a little bit of a handful.
Quark is cuter, though, I will say.
Oh yeah, well that's
between
true.
the two dogs.
That's true. But I just want a sleepy dog that doesn't need a whole lot of attention.
That's chill and will sit in your time machine when you need to shoot him back to the past.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. You're an awesome 80s teen.
Well, I knew that.
Your favorite pastime is hanging at the mall with your friends, staying home to dance with your mop, or pumping iron while smoking. Which one?
Let's go to the mall.
Let's go to the mall.
As Robin Sparkles so eloquently put it.
Yeah, I do not want to pump iron and smoke.
I mean,
the mall.
No, I'll be honest with you though. I guess like the younger two brothers were not technically teens, but like I always thought Nick as a kid was awesome. Like whenever you first meet him and he's like building a tiny model that's like a perfect replica of the shrinking machine. I'm like, that's awesome. And like
he's got his little lab coat.
He's got his lab coat. He's got his like remote control lawnmower. Like that kid was amazing to me as a child.
Well, and the other the bully kid, the Thompson kid, he takes him to task pretty easy.
Yes.
Like he may have a little bit of size and popularity on him, but Nicky can hold his own pretty easy against him. Okay, ant-sized or giant-sized?
Probably like forever.
No, you can at will. You can go ant size or giant size.
Ant size.
Yeah, I'd say ant size as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, pick one. Shrink ray, automatic lawnmower,
or
hovercraft.
Okay.
And now, do you know where I'm getting hovercraft?
No.
It's from the at Disney as well. They had the playground land, but they also had that 3D Honey, I Shrunk the Audience movie. Did you ever do that?
I did not do that one. No, I missed out on Honey, I Shrunk the Audience.
Oh my god. Okay, when you get on YouTube and watch it, it was the kind of 4D, you put on the 3D glasses, but there was like things that happened in your seats and air and smoke and all that stuff they would do, as Disney always does with those. And you never got to experience that. Okay, yeah. And in that movie, Zelensky has a hovercraft. So,
well, of course. Why not? Yeah.
So shrink ray, hovercraft, or self lawnmower.
RC lawnmower. Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up, because in watching this with my wife, like, this is the first movie that we've talked about, or show that we've talked about, that she watched with me, and was actually kind of excited to watch it with me.
Yeah, Laura Beth too.
And she, once it got to the point where Nikki reveals the RC lawnmower, she goes, "Why don't we have those? Like, why is it, 20, 30 years later and we still don't have those?" And I was like, why don't we? We've got Roombas. And then, like, I was talking to you about it, and you said that
we do. I was at Lowe's this past weekend buying plumbing parts that I needed to do a leak fix, and I don't know why it's going into winter, but they still had lawnmowers out, and one of them was a self-propelled lawnmower, or not even self-propelled. It was like autonomous. Yeah. And you program it to your yard like a Roomba vacuum, and it does it on its own.
Yeah, I 100% would go with that, because I hate mowing the lawn.
I stinking hate mowing the lawn too. That's
so I would take that above the shrinking machine.
Yeah. All right, last one. You have to survive for a week being tiny.
Okay.
What do you eat? A giant oatmeal cream pie or Cheerios?
Cheerios.
You pick the Cheerios?
Yeah, because I'm afraid I would die if I tried to subsist on an oatmeal cream pie diet.
Well, you could just do the cream for dessert. You just keep with the oatmeal the rest of the time.
I feel like that's mostly sugar too.
It probably is. It probably is just sugar as well.
Would you go with the oatmeal cream pie? Is that?
Well, nah, I'd go with the Cheerios. Yeah, because I think one would still do you.
Oh, I'm for a week. Yeah.
For a week,
that's all
you could probably eat on just a single Cheerio.
I wonder what a stale Cheerio would taste like if you're that small. Like, would it still be nasty? Because that's the only thing like Cheerios.
Well, thing too is you'd probably have to like fashion some sort of tiny axe to chip away at the thing. Yeah. So okay, before we wrap up, there's one last thing. So this movie has its sequels, right? The Blow Up the Kid and the We Shrunk Ourselves. Yeah. But this this movie also had a TV show. Yeah. That you and I both watched. Mm-hmm. I think you watched a little bit, or
I may have seen all of it.
Well, I thought
in reruns though.
I thought I only watched it a little bit, but then in getting on YouTube and looking at stuff on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, because there's people who've put entire episodes on there or clips from those, and I was like, man, there's a lot of people. There's a lot more videos about the TV show than there were about the movie, and sure enough, I started looking at some. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And I remember. Do you remember Fluffy or Foofy, or I forget how you say the bear's name? They had this bear.
What?
Oh yeah. I think Zelensky made it in the TV show, and it was this little teddy bear that was an AI, and it was evil. And it tries to
remember that now. Yeah.
It tries to take over the world and to kill them multiple times. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." And so I clicked this video that was like the best of Foofy. and it did these random clips from the show, and there's one where it's almost like on Doctor Who, the exterminators, the what you call them, Daleks. Yeah, it's almost like those where its eyes get red, and at one point its arms pop up, and he has Gatling guns under his arms, and he's like, die, and he starts shooting up the place, and the family is ducking for covers, and I just started laughing my head off. I was like, this is awesome. I completely forgot about this, but I wondered if my parents ever walked in on me watching, like, what is this?
What are you watching?
Yeah, so...
I had completely forgotten about that, but I'm going to YouTube it now.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure there's some pretty hilarious moments from that show as well. It's one of those that the show probably isn't that great, but
it was,
maybe for its time.
It was kiddie fair. I mean, it was.
Oh, absolutely.
But
probably had some fun stuff in there as well.
I think they shrank the moon at one point. That's the one visual that stands out to me, is that there was like an asteroid or a rocket or something that was going to blow up the moon, and so they had to shrink it so that the thing would miss the moon and then blow the moon back up to normal size.
The one I remember the most is there was this ghost that was following the daughter around, and there was this guy. It was this guy that looked like a G-man walking around, and like a car would go through him. But apparently, it was a science experiment thing that made it to where his molecules could pass through things. But she thought she was being haunted by a ghost, and and then there was another one where like Grandpa swallows them. They get shrunk, and Grandpa eats them. So all in an episode.
Fun for the whole family.
Yeah, that would be a fun one in the future, that we take a few of those episodes to see what is it, what really is this.
Well, I'm thankful that we've scheduled ourselves out for quite a while, because I think I'm ready to move into something else and don't necessarily want to go drudge up old episodes of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV series.
You're hoping I'll forget about this and we'll never come back to it. That's fair. Well, this has been our episode on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Next time, this is a nice family fare film here. In our next episode, we're going to be talking about families in sci-fi specifically. And when you think about sci-fi, there's actually a ton of properties that focus on families, family relationships, dynamics, and how they play into the situation. And so what's one that you can think of off the top of your head, Brett?
Yeah, I mean, the first family of science fiction, the Jetsons.
The Jetsons. See, what year did the Jetsons come out? Because I think of Lost in Space when I think first family, space family. But I don't know. When do those...
They probably are contemporaries. I bet they're really close to the same time.
Yeah, but that's what immediately I think of. The Robinsons and the Jetsons, both great families, but there's all kinds. And so we're going to be talking specifically about those in our next episode.
All right, well, as always, thank you so much for joining us on the Dead Padawans Society. We appreciate your support and feedback. Thank you so much. If you've messaged us on Facebook or sent us an email at deadpadawanssociety@gmail.com. We definitely love interacting with you and hearing your take on the episodes. And, maybe you had a different opinion or would have answered one of Nick's questions a different way than we did.
Einstein or Quark? Which one? Drop us a line, comment, like, share, and interact with us on social media.
And we look forward to hearing from you. Live long and prosper.
And may the force be with you, always.